Can high-level diplomacy between the United States and China avert greater conflict and reshape the future of global power when so many flashpoints remain unresolved? This question echoed through the corridors of Beijing in May 2026 as Donald Trump became the first U.S. president in nearly a decade to set foot in China. The world watched as pageantry unfolded on an extraordinary scale. Red carpets rolled out at the Great Hall of the People, military bands playing under banners of constructive, strategic, stable relations. But beneath the ceremonial embrace, both rivals confronted a far harsher reality, a world teetering on the edge of crisis, where even the grandest of summits could only offer a fragile pause. Trump's arrival was the image of diplomatic theater. Escorted through Beijing's streets, he was greeted by President Xi Jinping at the Zhongnanhai Leadership Compound, the nerve center of Chinese power. The symbolism was unmistakable. The United States and China, face to face, at a time when the stakes for global stability had rarely been higher. Accompanying Trump was an unusually high-profile delegation. Eric Trump, Elon Musk, Tim Cook, NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, and a suite of senior officials, each representing America's enduring economic and technological leverage. Inside the closed doors, the mood shifted from spectacle to substance. Over 2 days, Trump and Xi met for nearly 5 hours of talks, first in a tightly controlled 2-hour session, then in an expansive 3-hour negotiation. Both leaders emerged insisting the summit was a milestone. They claimed a new era of engagement, where intense rivalry would be contained by candid dialogue. Yet, as always, the substance mattered more than the statements. Trump boasted of fantastic trade deals. China, he said, would buy more U.S. oil, more soybeans, and up to 750 Boeing jets. But with Chinese officials refusing to confirm the numbers and no comprehensive trade agreement in sight, uncertainty hung over the economic heart of the relationship. The urgency was clear. The U.S. China tariff truce struck in October 2025 was running out, set to expire in November 2026. For a brief window, the United States had lowered tariffs on all Chinese goods. China, in turn, paused its restrictions on rare earth exports. But U.S. officials warned that Beijing was slow to approve new export licenses, keeping global supply chains on edge. Both sides understood. If the truce collapsed, economic pain would escalate on both sides of the Pacific, threatening a fragile recovery in global trade. For American businesses, represented at the summit by the likes of Musk and Cook, the stakes were existential. Yet the summit's agenda stretched far beyond trade. Pressing over every discussion was the shadow of the U.S.-Iran war. The conflict had roiled the energy markets, drawn in naval forces from across the world, and placed the Strait of Hormuz on a knife's edge. Both Trump and Xi recognized the dangers. They agreed, at least in rhetoric, that the strait must remain open for energy shipments, a lifeline not just for Asia but for the global economy. Trump floated the possibility of easing sanctions on Chinese firms buying Iranian oil, a signal meant to entice Beijing's cooperation. But the underlying reality was more complex. The United States maintained a naval blockade on Iranian ports, and a ceasefire, fragile as ever, had only been in place since early April 2026. Even as the summit unfolded, the volatility of the region became impossible to ignore. A ship was seized near the UAE. An Indian-flagged cargo vessel sank near Oman under murky circumstances. Iranian state media claimed Chinese vessels had begun passing through the strait under new protocols. Each incident underscored the same truth. No summit, however grand, could erase the risk of escalation in a region where competition and cooperation were inseparable. For both Washington and Beijing, Iran was not just a test of power, but a test of restraint. The United States and its allies, including European partners, viewed Iran's regional ambitions and nuclear program as ongoing security threats. China, dependent on Middle Eastern energy, had its own calculus. Stability was vital, but so too was its ability to navigate between the West and Tehran without being drawn into direct confrontation. If Iran was a crisis of the moment, Taiwan was the enduring flashpoint. Xi Jinping's warning was blunt. Mishandling Taiwan, he said, could lead to clashes and even conflicts between the United States and China. The message was meant to be unmistakable. For Beijing, the question of Taiwan is not just a diplomatic dispute, but a core national interest, rooted in decades of history and law. Chinese sovereignty claims, backed by military modernization, have only grown more assertive in recent years. Trump, for his part, struck a note of ambiguity. He insisted that U.S. policy on Taiwan had not changed. He made no public commitment on arms sales, and indicated he had not decided whether to proceed with an arms package for Taiwan planned for later in the year. You're watching Today in Context, where we go beyond the headlines to explain the forces shaping the world around us. If this kind of analysis helps you make sense of the bigger picture, like the video and subscribe for more. This cautious stance was no accident. The United States, bound by the Taiwan Relations Act, provides defensive support to Taiwan while officially recognizing only one China. The ambiguity is deliberate. It is intended to deter unilateral moves by either side, but also to avoid locking Washington into a commitment it may not be able or willing to honor in a crisis. For the United States and its allies, supporting Taiwan is about more than regional security. It is about upholding a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific, preserving freedom of navigation, and maintaining an open economic system. Japan and European partners have emphasized the need for dialogue and the peaceful resolution of disputes, while also reaffirming their commitment to stability in the Taiwan Strait. Beijing, in contrast, views external involvement as interference in its internal affairs and has repeatedly stated that reunification is inevitable. The summit's discussions on Taiwan revealed the core dilemma facing U.S. China relations. Both sides seek stability, but neither is prepared to yield on issues they consider vital. The risk is that strategic ambiguity, once a source of balance, could become a source of miscalculation. As the summit drew to a close, the world's attention shifted to the Strait of Hormuz, where incidents continued to unfold. The ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran remained in place, but it was clear how rapidly events could spiral out of control. Chinese ships, asserting their new protocols, tested the boundaries of U.S. naval presence. Energy markets reacted nervously, and global shipping firms calculated the risks of new disruptions. In Washington, the summit was hailed as a stabilizing moment. Trump's team pointed to the resumption of high-level dialogue, the personal engagement between leaders, and the prospect, however undefined, of future economic agreements. American business leaders voiced cautious optimism, hoping that even an incomplete truce would buy time for supply chains to recover and new deals to take shape. In Beijing, official statements echoed the language of win-win cooperation, but the lack of concrete agreements on trade or security made clear that the hard work remained unfinished. For U.S. allies and partners, the summit offered reassurance but not certainty. European governments welcomed the commitment to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, recognizing its critical role in global energy stability. Asian partners, especially Japan, watched the discussions on Taiwan closely, keenly aware that the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific hinges on U.S. resolve and regional unity. Yet beneath the surface, a more sobering calculation persisted. The summit had stabilized relations, but only for the moment. The tariff truce was temporary. Trade friction could easily flare again if talks stalled or if either side felt the other was reneging on informal understandings. The rare earth supply chain, so critical to Western technology industries, remained highly vulnerable to regulatory delays in Beijing. In the Middle East, any new incident could rekindle conflict, with global energy security hanging in the balance. And over Taiwan, the risk of miscalculation, by design or by accident, remained ever present. The pageantry of Beijing 2026 was designed to project strength and unity, but its real legacy is far less certain. For both the United States and China, the summit marked a pivotal step, an acknowledgement that rivalry must be managed, not simply endured. Yet as Trump and Xi departed, neither could claim victory. Instead, they left the world with a fragile pause, a window in which high-level diplomacy has bought time, but not yet solved the most dangerous disputes. The lessons of the summit are stark. Symbolism can calm markets and reassure allies, but it cannot substitute for tough decisions. The United States, drawing on its alliances and economic power, has preserved a measure of stability, but the underlying causes of tension over trade, technology, the Middle East, and Taiwan remain unresolved. China, committed to its core interests and global ambitions, is unlikely to yield on issues it considers existential. Both sides have shown that dialogue is possible, but also that diplomacy has limits. In a world where crises intersect and alliances are tested, the ambitions of great powers are often constrained by the realities of risk. The U.S. China Summit of 2026 stands as a reminder. Turning points in history are often fragile, shaped less by declarations than by the choices that follow. For now, the relationship is stabilized, but true peace and a lasting order will depend on decisions yet to come, especially on Taiwan, global conflict, and the economic architecture of the world. The future remains open, shaped by the same question that brought the world's attention to Beijing. Can diplomacy contain rivalry, or will unresolved flashpoints define the next era of global power? The stories that define tomorrow are already unfolding today. Subscribe to Today in Context for clear, grounded analysis of the events shaping our world, one story at a time.